Okay, now let's recall our um, the concepts which we discussed on last Friday. How this cloud architecture works. We kind of seen the different services, the uh, infrastructure as a service, platform as a service, and software as a service. And at last, we have started with the basic components of cloud. Now, how it starts with, we starts with the any specific cloud architecture starts with tenant ID, which is associated with one single domain. If you're a part of certain domain, it starts with the tenant ID, which is at the highest hierarchy. And for each tenant ID, there are multiple tenants. And in that tenant, a tenant can have multiple subscription. So basically, the first hierarchy of cloud is subscription. Then it goes to resource group. Then it goes to the individual resource or a service. Now we have also seen how do we move a subscription from one tenant. Usually we can move a subscription as well. We can move a resource group from one subscription to different subscription, and vice versa. We can group. Wherever we are grouping services or resources, we can also move that services or resources from one resource group to another resource group. So all this hierarchy, we would follow the same process on our daily basis. Whenever we touch base this cloud, we'll follow the same process. Now, how do we follow the same process? Once you open this cloud, see, once you log into this cloud environment, the same process. First, anyhow, we are part of certain tenant. We have logged in with our email IDs. The second one is go to your subscription. We are in the subscription. Once click on this, come down. Now all your billing information would be billed. We have few options here. You can minimize this tab. There is an option here, just like a small arrows. You can minimize this, come down to the resource group. Now, if at all the resource group is created, well and good. If not, we have to create a new resource group. Now, either you can click on any resource group. You have an option, click on create. I mean, whatever service or resource you're looking out for, we have that option. We can create that service or resource group, kind of resource in that specific resource group. So either this process, or else we have an option, come down. You can directly go to the resources. You can simply click here. Whatever resource we want to create, we can create that specific resource. So usually, if you directly are in the home tab, now this is the basic home tab, the basic UI of the Azure portal. If you search any specific service, even that service option is available here. But the thing is, if you follow this approach, go to subscription, open that subscription, come down to the resource group or come down to the resource level of hierarchy, and then click on create, you will get an idea that every time you're working on a cloud, you should follow the same hierarchy: subscription, resource group, and resource or a service. See, if you directly search here, there is a very high chance that people tend to forget how subscription works, how resource group works, and how a service will work. The time when you think that you are capable enough, you're not going to forget what this cloud hierarchy is. Now, above subscription also there is a tenant. If you, are you in a position that you will not forget these kind of options, the subscription, resource group, and resources option? You can directly go to your portal, search what kind of service you're looking out for, get that service activated. But if you follow this approach, the hierarchy wise approach, it is very easier to understand. And probably you will not even forget how the cloud hierarchy flows, how the information flows in any specific cloud. Now, as we have seen subscription, as we have seen resource group, as we have seen the services, let's get started with the basic services today. Now, what do you mean by basic services? I'll be starting with storage accounts. Now, in kind of storage accounts, there are multiple storage accounts. There are multiple options. One which starts with blob, the other one is ADLS. These are the two commonly used storage services. Now, see, whatever I would be explaining in a cloud, I would be noting down in a small notepad so that it would be useful for you people also to get understand. Now, any specific storage service, the basic idea of a storage service is to store information. Now, information can be any specific type. It might be an image, it might be a MP4 file, it might be MP3 file, it might be CSV file, it might be Excel file, any specific file. Now, these are all the kind of type, the file formats. Now, if you come across Azure, if you come across any cloud services, you might also heard there is a file name called as Parquet. Now, when we go deep into the storage services, when we go deep into the Azure Data Factory, there you will get the exact meaning of file types. But usually a file can be of many formats. It can be image, MP4, MP3, CSV, the Excel format, the Parquet format, or there are multiple formats. There is a Avro file. This is also one kind of file format. Now, every file, what kind of file is useful where, we are going to see in detail. But to just get with started, what exactly storage account is, that we are going to see. Now, the storage accounts in Azure cloud is broadly classified into two types. Now, in these two types also, what do you mean by blob? See, blob is binary large object. Now, what exactly binary large object is? Blobs usually can store large data, which is image, video, which is MP4, audio, which is MP3. So any kind of multimedia file, which we are using, that can be stored in this blobs. Now, a multimedia file is not always structured file. It can be unstructured. It can be semi-structured also. Now, that is the behavior of a blob. Whereas ADLS is Azure Data Lakes. See, both the storage services, Blob and ADLS, there is not much difference. The only thing is, if I go back, if I click on create subscription, already subscription is there, come down to the, either you can go to the resource group or else simply go to the resources, click on create. See here, there are multiple options. All the services which are listed, we can see that services. Now, somewhere it is related to storage. If I scroll down, there is an option called as storage here. Now, in this storage, you can see multiple options are available. So there are multiple options available. The default option which we need to select is this storage account. Click on storage account. It will take some time to load this. Now, many might also have a question that I'm trying to directly jump into the subscription storage account. How do we create it? See, the one who have, I mean, I guess not everyone might have activated this, except few who are part of already a SQL and Power BI course. Now, we would be sharing you the email IDs. Let me repeat it again. Our KSR team would be sharing the email IDs with the respective folks. Once the email ID is shared, I would definitely show you how to activate this portal. But for time being, I've directly jumped into the storage account. Once these 5 sessions are completed, I'll give you an idea how to activate it and how to start your the Azure concepts practicing at your end also. See, once I am in this storage account, Azure Storage is a Microsoft managed service. See, all this information is listed. Durable, scalable, these are all the advantages or properties which is highly available, secure. Now, Azure Storage includes, see here you can usually get this option. Azure Storage includes Azure Blobs, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Now, what do you mean by Gen 2? I'll also explain it. There are few more options. I'll also discuss these two options, but these are the most frequently used options from a data analyst point of perspective. Blobs and Azure Data Lakes. Now, in case of Azure Data Lakes, SS services, Azure Data Lake services, and this is Gen 2, generation 2. Now, usually here our large info in terms of unstructured or structured data. Now, what do you mean by structured and unstructured data? Whatever our CSV file, CSV is one of the ADLS file only. Parquet is one of the ADLS file only. Avro is one of the ADLS file only. These files are frequently used by the data engineering or data analyst folks, where an information is being extracted from a certain source and we store that specific information in these files. These are the file formats which are available in ADLS. So you can store, Excel is also one of them. Even if you want to store in Excel, you can store it in Excel as well. Now, these are the file formats. Apart from these two, there are other two storage services which are not being used, but still these services have, we have that flexibility. You can use this service. Now, what do you mean by um, ADLS and Blob? The other service is specifically a table storage. Now, what do you mean by table storage? It's a kind of NoSQL database. In simple terms, it's a NoSQL database. The other one is queue storage. Now, what do you mean by queue storage? It's a kind of message uh, storage service. Now, where do we use this queue storages? Basically, wherever we are using a kind of messaging service, a kind of communication service, where we are communicating from one end to different end, from one source to different source, that information can be stored in a message format. That message format is called as a queue storage. It is generally stored in a queue. Now, what do you mean by queue? See, if you're entering this queue, one who enters first, that specific person will also exit first. Now, there is a queue. Assume that there is a queue. I'll give you an idea. Now, this is a long queue. So if a person is trying to enter from this end, the same person will try to exit from this end. So this is source one and this is source two. This is a queue. In simple terms, a person who tries to enter this queue first, he'll exit that first. So it is FIFO, first in, first out. This is generally called as FIFO, which is first in, first out. A person who is trying to enter from one source, he'll try to exit from a different source. So here you can store whatever information we are moving from one source to different source. There can be an ETL which is done between this source one and source two. A kind of extract, transform, loading is done. Now that extract, transformation and loading, whatever transformation we are doing here, we are extracting from this source, we are doing transformation here and we are loading it to this source. So whenever you want to store this information, it would be stored in a queue format, a kind of queue format. And the last format is, in case of ADLS, it is also called as file format. It's a kind of file storage where our information is stored in files, a CSV file, a Parquet file, a Excel file. Now, what do you mean by table storage? It's a kind of NoSQL database. NoSQL database in the sense, the information is mostly unstructured. Almost all the information is unstructured. Any specific information which is coming from any specific source, the information is unstructured, but it is stored in table format. It is stored in table format. Now, if you are storing any kind of unstructured information, that unstructured information is kind of stored in a table, which is kind of structured. Table is always structured. There is a row, there is a column. Now, if the unstructured data, see, this is one of the table. And in this table, usually information is stored in columns and rows. So even if you're loading that unstructured data, somewhere it would be stored in columns, somewhere it would be stored in rows, this way. Horizontally and vertically, this information is stored. So usually any kind of unstructured data which is stored in a table storage is called as semi-structured data. It is neither completely structured, it is neither completely unstructured. Why? Because we are trying to store this data in a table format. So NoSQL is purely unstructured, but if the data is stored in this table format, it is usually converted into semi-structured format. It is usually converted into a semi-structured format. So basically, there are four different types. There are four different types, out of which two we used frequently. One of them is blob. Second is file storage, which is also called as ADLS. Third is table storage, where it's a kind of NoSQL database. And fourth is a queue storage. So any kind of storage services in Azure is broadly classified into four types: blob, file, table, and queue. So these two will never come across as a data analyst, or maybe as a Power BI developer, or as a business analyst, or even as a BI developer. These all roles belongs to any data analyst or any Power BI developer. You will never come across this table storage. You will never come across this queue storage. But still, these options are available in Power BI. We have that flexibility. If one of this information is any specific information which is stored in a table storage, might be a NoSQL database, and from where we are pulling this data and kind of storing it in a semi-structured format. So we have that flexibility. You can store that, you can get that data to the Power BI as well. Let me open Power BI and show you how do we get these datas. And then let's jump into the characteristics of each storage. Now, once you open this Power BI, see, you have that option, click on get data, click on more. Now, once you are on this get data, um, now if you go down to this Azure option, see in this Azure option, you can see blob storage, you can see table storage, you can see Azure Data Lake Gen 1 and Azure Data Lake Gen 2. There is one more option called as Cosmos DB and Azure Data Explorer. These are also um, a kind of databases. This is a combination. The Azure Data Explorer is a combination of SQL and big data, and Azure Cosmos DB is purely NoSQL DB. So if you're looking out, you want to dump a data from Azure Cosmos DB, you can directly dump into Power BI, or else you can convert it in a table storage. Why? Because table storage can accept NoSQL. Cosmos is NoSQL. So you can get that Cosmos DB, which is purely unstructured data, and store it in a table format, which is a semi-structured, which will be converted to a semi-structured format. So we have multiple options here. Uh, Blob storage is one of the storage. Table, the data lake storage Gen 2, and data lake storage Gen 1. Now, what do you mean by Gen 1 and Gen 2? In case of file storage, in case of ADLS, it is broadly classified into Gen 1 versus Gen 2. See, let me go back to the portal. Here we have that option. We can select whatever storage format we want. Now, if I mention that storage name, now you have to select the region. Whatever region you want, you can select that. See here, we have that option. Performance, you can select a standard performance or premium performance. You can select any kind of the geo redundant storage, the zone redundant storage. Once we are, getting deep into this, I'll give you an idea what redundancy we have to select. Usually, the best is local redundant storage. It is most cost effective, and for us, it will also be a very useful as a data analyst. We may not spend much of amount on the storage services. See, once you click all these options, once you mention the storage account name, you can go to the next step. Now, here there are few options which we have to select in the advance. See, there is no as such option which can differentiate whether you are creating a blob, which can differentiate whether you are creating a kind of file system which is ADLS, whether you are creating a table storage or whether you are creating a queue storage. All these components are altogether listed in one single service, which is storage account. So we may need not select all of these options. If you create a storage account, all these options are automatically enabled in that specific service. All these services are automatically enabled. See, there are a few options here still. Blob storage, access tier, Azure files, enable large file share. Now, if one of the large file shares you are accessing it, you can click here. So as of now, let me go ahead. Network connectivity, enable public access for all the networks. Okay. Let me click on next. There's no as such option. Customer manage key, all services. No tags required. Now we're in the last step. I'm trying to create this storage account. Now in the storage account also, there are multiple options. I mean, there are multiple ways to store that data. Let me click on create. Yeah, it will take some time to create this complete storage account. Now, by the time it is created, what do you mean by Gen 1 and Gen 2? See, the name itself conveys Gen 2 is generation 2 and Gen 1 is generation 1. Now, why ADLS only has these options? No other file system has these options. See, usually whenever this ADLS was introduced, the file storage was introduced, the Azure Data Lake storage, they have certain updates which are being made. In Gen 1 and Gen 2, there are few updates which are generally being made. So in case of you want to compare the Gen 2 versus Gen 1, there are very slight differences. Let me mention these differences to get an idea. Now, coming down to the difference, let me mention Gen 1 here. See, in case of generation 1, this is a separate component. See, we have created a storage account. This storage account is default created as Gen 2. Now, it can be blob, it can be file system, it can be table storage, or it can be a queue storage also. But in case if you're thinking about this, if you're thinking about the file system, which is ADLS, this is usually, in case if you're creating a storage account, default it is generation 2. Now you want to go back and create it as Gen 1, simply mention Gen 1. See, if you mention Gen 1 in the search bar, here itself it is giving you an idea, Data Lake Storage Gen 1. You can click here. See, this service is an outdated service. The ADLS Gen 1 is an outdated service. It is nowhere used as of now. Many of them are directly going with the default option, which is generation 2 in case of storage account. Now, if you still want to go back and create this as Gen 1, you have that flexibility. You can create it as Gen 1. Click on create. The same ADLS would be created. See, it is asking you for the resource group. It is asking you for which location, and it is asking you for the specific service name, that storage service name. And it would be created as Gen 1, not as Gen 2. Now, the difference is Gen 1, I mean, it's an outdated version. Yes, except it's an outdated version. But the basic difference here is, see, Gen 1 usually is a kind of flat file system, simple flat file system. Now, flat file system means I'm not sure how many of you know about this flat file. CSV is a flat file. The information is more a kind of unstructured. It's a simple flat file system, and the information is distributed in blocks. The information is usually distributed in blocks. Now, it can store any kind of, I mean, usually at any kind of data format, but more a kind of, it should be a CSV file. If you load any specific data, it is more a kind of CSV file. Now, in case of Gen 2, what is the basic differences? Gen 2 is more a kind of multi-model system. It's a kind of multi-model storage. Now, what do you mean by multi-model storage? It's a comparison of blob and Gen 1. If you're using Gen 2, it's a comparison of blob and Gen 1. So in ADLS, an information can be stored as a large information. It can be an image file also. It can be a Parquet file also, or it can be Excel file also. So a combination of CSV, a combination of blob, the binary large object. So this is one of the basic difference. In terms of security, Gen 2 has more security options. Now, how security options are there? See, Gen 2 can store big data files as well. Whereas Gen 1, we do not have that flexibility. In case of Gen 1, it cannot store big data files. It cannot store big data files. Whereas in case of Gen 2, it can store big data files. And in Gen 2, we use the concept called as, or maybe the maximum limit is 5 TB. The maximum limit of file storage is 5 TB here. It's a kind of 5 TB. That means 5 terabytes of information can be stored. Now, there are few ADLS accounts which can store even petabytes of information. One petabyte of information also. Petabyte is more than terabyte, but there is a flexibility. You can store 1 petabyte of information also. But usually in Gen 2, the maximum size limit we allow for one of the Gen 2 concept is 5 TB only. That is one restriction. There are few options where you want to store this information more than 5 TB. Yes, you can take ADLS with 1 petabytes of information, but this is more a kind of a separate research. If you want to store more kind of 5 TB, more than 5 TB information, you have to additionally research and create this ADLS where it can combinedly take 1 petabyte of information as well. These are basic differences. Gen 1 is kind of outdated. There is no security option available. Now, if you want to store any specific files, see, there are few security features. That security features, no option in Gen 1. Anyone can directly come and access this file, one who has access to that Azure portal. In case of security features in Gen 2, you can additionally add a username and password. This is one of the added advantage in case of Gen 2. Now, to get it summarized, how this storage system works. Let me open this. Okay, now how this storage system works in Azure. It is broadly classified into 4 different types. Any specific storage system, it is broadly classified. Now, this is with respect to Azure. It is broadly classified as blob. It is classified as file storage, which is nothing but our ADLS. It is classified as queue storage. And it is classified as, what's the last option? Table storage. And in this file system also, there is Gen 1, which is outdated and it's a separate service. You want to create a Gen 1 file system, you have to create it separately in Azure. You cannot create by default storage account. Default storage account would be Gen 2, which will get additional security features. This is a default option. This is the storage hierarchy in Azure. See, once this storage account is created, now, how do I see the storage account is created? See, if you go to the storage account, this is a service. Here you can see the storage account is created. Now, in the storage account also, how this information is stored. You have these options here: container, file share, queue, and table. See, here itself, we are getting these options. Now, this is file share. In container only, you will get both options, blob as well as your ADLS. Both can be stored in this container. You want to store it as a queue, you can create a queue. You want to store it as a table, the Azure table storage, you can create a table here. All these options are enabled in only one single service, which is storage account. Once you create a storage account, in that only you will get all these options. Now, container is a combination of blob as well as ADLS, the file storage system. Both can be stored here. Now, what do you mean by container? See, usually whenever a storage account is created, our ADLS and our blob, these are frequently used. In these, there is a concept called as container. Whereas for a queue and a table, you will get these options default. Queue and table, these options are there. But in case of blob and ADLS or file system, container is the highest hierarchy. Container is the highest hierarchy. Container is nothing but as the main folder. It is the main folder. This is the main folder, or in simple terms, a container is the one which stores our information. This acts like a main folder. This acts like a container where we can dump all our data. all the data which we are looking out for, all this data can be dumped into this main container. Now in this container, the second level of hierarchy is folder. This is second level of hierarchy.
Ritesh, what's the data
Go ahead.
limit for these blobs? Blobs basically.
I guess Sirisha, your voice is very low,
Am I audible now? What is
bit
the
clear. Hmm.
yeah? What is the data limit that we can store in blobs basically? The limit
Um,
that we have in blobs.
you can go with the same 5 TB format only.
Okay, the same one for
Yep,
blob as well.
because just blob and ADLS are combination which are both available in container only. The maximum is 5 TB.
Okay.
You can still store 1 petabyte, but it should be combination of multiple containers. Not a kind of one single container. It can be combination of multiple containers.
So that's the combination of structured and unstructured data, right? Blobs
Yes.
basically contain any
Yep.
large file systems. Okay.
Now, if I go to this container, see in this container, a default log file is kept. I can click here. I can create a container name, any specific name you want. I can create that. This is the container name. See, there is an option here, encryption type. You want certain encryption, you can keep that encryption. I'll keep it default. Let me create this. A container would be created. So in this container, any blob files, your image, your video, your audio, even your CSVs, Excel, Sparkwit files, that all can be kept. Now under this container, there is an option called as upload. Now if I click on upload, see here you can browse your files. You can directly dump your local system files here. Any local system files you want to dump, yes, you can directly dump that files here.
So
Either
here
you can.
by default, are we getting blob only?
So this is a combination, sir. This is a combination blob and ADLS. Either you can use ADLS, either you can use blob, both together in single container only. They have kept us as single option. Container is a combination of ADLS and blob. So whatever you use in blob, whatever you use in ADLS, both can be kept under one single component.
So container should be must for
Yes, container is must. If you are working as a data analyst, you will definitely come across container, and container is must for blob or is must for ADLS.
So as you said earlier, blob is used for my files like media files or
Yes.
pictures, but ADLS coming to regular files. So is internally separate that it will go for blob, but as per viewing purpose, it's a container, right? For
Yep.
us.
For viewing purpose, it is both together clubbed in one single environment only, which is container. There isn't any difference. Both together are combined in one single container only. Now, see in this container also, come down to this container. The thing is, you can directly upload a file. See, under this container, you can create a folder also. Under this container, we can create a folder. Now, how is it possible? See, manually creating folder is not there. Manual option is disabled for creating folder. If you're working in any specific ETL tool, in that ETL tool, assume this is just an example. If you're working in this ETL tool, let me explain it differently. So usually if you're working on ETL tool, we load data from one of the source, where this is one of the source, which is source one. And we are using the ETL tool to extract this information from source one. Here we are doing our transformation. So this is how the information is extracted. Transformation is done. This is transformation. And in this transformation, we have that flexibility. You want to dump this data to some other source. Now, this is source two, and this source can be your ADLS. It can be ADLS or it can be blob, either of them, because both together are can be stored in a container. So here in transformation, there you will get an option. If you mention a container, under that container, you can mention one more folder. Now assume that there is a container with Ritesh name. Under this Ritesh container, you can create one more folder. We have that option here in the transformation tab of any ETL tool. You can create subfolder, folder or subfolder. That means within this container, there is one folder. Within that folder, there is one more folder. And within that subfolder, there is a file present. That can be a Parquet file. That can be your image file. That can be your Avro file, or that can be your CSV file. So container we can create manually. We have that flexibility to create a container. But once the container is created, if you want to create multiple subfolders or maybe folder within a folder, in that case, you have to do it in the ETL service only. Now, how is it possible to create a folder under folder? And why is that recommended is, see, under this Ritesh container, I might be working today. Today is 1st of April. I might be working today and I want to load files. So on 1st of April, I have loaded few files. So how that files would be stored? Under Ritesh container, it would be stored under folder called as 1st April, which is a folder name. This is folder name. And under this folder, either you can directly dump a file or else you can create one more subfolder. At what time I have loaded these files? At 8:50 or 51, I have loaded these files. This is subfolder. Under this folder, your Parquet files can be kept. So usually hierarchy is created if you want to store this information on day-wise or date-wise basis. And again, you are coming down on 2nd of April, you want to again load these files, a different folder would be created. Now created means that folder option is available in transformation window of any ADF tool. That's a kind of ETL. ADF is an ETL. There we have that flexibility. If you mention you have to change that date, today is 2nd of April. So folder should be created as 2nd of April. You have that flexibility there. A subfolder would be created under same container Ritesh, which is called as 2nd of April folder. So usually a date and day wise bifurcation you want to do. In that case, folder and subfolder concepts come into picture.
Can we have a gist of what's packet files are?
Yeah, I mean, you can, okay, you want it to be an example?
Yeah, I just one simple example.
Okay, so the question is, I can give you an example, but here I have to create the ADLS, sorry, ADF, the Azure Data Factory.
Just one example should be fine.
Yeah, I'll give you an example. Once I create a ADF, there I can load, there I can create subfolders. There you'll get an idea. Now, if I create ADF now, prior to creating ADF, it would be very confusing for you folks.
That should be fine, Ritesh, not a problem.
Now the question is, Rakesh has a question that as I've said, both ADLS and Blob are same. If I want to load this data to the Power BI, there we have two different options. See, I've tried to click on blob storage. It is asking me for account name. This is the account name. Let me see if with the account name I'm able to connect. Now there is an account key. Keys. I'm getting this container. Now this is for blob I have seen. Let me cancel this. Let me go to get data, more, Azure, your Gen 2, click on connect. So it is again asking you, asking me for the URL. Now, what do you mean by URL? If I go to container, if I go to KSR practice, see, there is a URL here. This is what it is asking. A URL would be generated. Now, to give you an idea how this URL is copied, let me load some data here. Some CSV file. Downloads. Yeah, I load this folder, and under this folder, I load this one of the Excel files. See, even though I'm loading this file as a Gen 2, somewhere it is giving you blob only. That option is somewhere reflected as blob only. As both are combination, you can still see. Why is it?
I think we have to
That's
remove the
correct.
file name.
Mhm.
I think we has to remove the file name.
No, even file name is not a problem. If I remove this file name, usually, directly I'm loading a file. That is not the case. Let me see, why is it getting error? To container here. Where do I get that service default available? Access control is not properties. Let me see the properties. Get this. Something is blocking. Networking keys.
Ritesh, there are two different keys, right? Key 1 and key 2, I believe.
There are two different.
keys I saw, key 1 and key 2 in the Azure.
Both would one of them is a backup key.
Okay.
If one of them is getting deleted, maybe this is getting expired, you can take that second key. So both are same. There is no as such problem. Some there is some blockage which is causing this, because container blob it got connected, but why is it not getting connected to ADLS? That is the question. Is it that license container properties? This is simply unlocked shared access tokens. Why is it show this is correctly logged in? I've changed the SaaS also. This is getting corrected. Somewhere it is blocking. Let me have got that idea. Access to this resource is forbidden. Something is blocking us. I've added my IP also, but I guess where is it blocking? I have to go back and see. Usually, I mean, there won't be any problem if you want to connect the ADLS. See, it had that option. If I click on edit, click on OK, it was asking me for the login. Just state clear permissions. Something in the blob is I mean, our ADLS is blocking. Let me see, what is it blocking? I've added my IP also. There is no error as such. It would have been thrown error if there is some issue with this for the URL format. Somewhere our account key or shared access token is where it is blocking us. Okay, let me see if I go down. Access keys, show this. Specified content does not exist. Should be secured. Okay, trying to connect. 404. Let me see, what is it which is causing this issue? HTTPS. Okay. The requested URL ADLS. It is navigating the Fabric community. Here you'll get some idea. Why is it contributor? Okay. Contributor access is there. I am the owner of this. URL is wrong. If I try Databricks, okay, still I switch the URL listed as primary endpoint in the properties of the data lake itself. It works. Okay, primary endpoints. Let me see. Private endpoints. Where is the primary endpoint? I've kept it to all networks. When I switched the URL to listed as primary endpoint in the properties of the data lake, it works. URL you're using. If you go to storage account Azure portal from web view, can connect it to. If you want to try, no, this is not the case. I think container, folder, and file. This is correct. dfsco.windows.net. Okay, let's use this option. Container properties. We'll give it a last try. Let's see, why is it going wrong, that we have to identify it. One of the endpoint is blocking. I guess the endpoint does not support. So the issue is with the endpoints. Here I have to go down, get a new endpoint created. This private endpoint. Our system, the local system, is unable to identify what endpoint it is trying to connect. So I have to go back and create an endpoint. It's a different process. Now the question is, do we as a data analyst or as a cloud person, do we have to go back and create this endpoint? No, these endpoints are usually created by the cloud admin and the architect level people. So if you're working in any organization, you will never come across these situations. I mean, a rare chance that if you're getting this endpoint issue, you can connect with your the admin team who is working on this cloud. So the issue is somewhere this storage, the ADLS is blocking the endpoint. So I have to go back and create a private endpoint, which can be accessed from my local system. This Power BI is in my local system, so that is why it is causing an issue to connect. So let me go back and create the endpoint. I'll show you how do we connect. Usually, if you come across these issues, this is more a kind of admin related issue, not with specific to data engineering or a data analyst folk, because we are not the admin people. We have to go back and create the endpoints. So in this networking option, there is that private endpoint. You have to click, get this private endpoint created, instance name, instance. So all this we have to create and get this approved from the admin people. So more a kind of admin work. I'll show you how this endpoint is created. Let me test it at my end, whether this is getting approved or not, and then I can directly connect it to the ADLS. So bit of confusing in case of ADLS, it is bit of confusing, but still there isn't any as such difficulty, because it is straightforward. If you mention that URL, if you mention the key, it should directly get connected unless there is an endpoint issue. Um, I'll show you how is it connected. Let me create the endpoint at my end and I'll check it whether it is getting connected or not. Okay, now coming down to the folder systems, the ADLS and blob, which are frequently used, we have seen. See here also in the fabric where they have mentioned, if you see after container, there is a folder. After folder, there is a file. So in this folder also, you can create one more folder, which is subfolder. So it follows that hierarchy. Folder is the second level, and at last file is at the third level. File is at the third level of hierarchy. Now we kind of seen how this storage account works, the basics of storage account. Um, One more important thing I also wanted to highlight is about the Azure Analysis Service. Now, for the people who have joined with Power BI, it would be very easy for you folks to understand. If you're working as a Power BI developer and see, there is already, let me open the powerbi.com. Now, in this powerbi.com, there are multiple workspaces. Now, in this workspace, there are multiple semantic models. There are multiple semantic models you can see. This is one semantic model. This is one semantic model. This is one semantic model. So in case you want to connect this semantic model directly to the Power BI. Now we have that flexibility. You can go down, get data, Power BI data sets. Semantic model is nothing but our Power BI data set, and I can connect this data set. Now this is one data set which I have. Click on connect. See, you will see the difference. Towards left, there was a table icon, the data view icon. That icon is missing. Even though the report is connected, this specific report is connected to that data set, that semantic model, that data view icon is missing, and directly model view icon is available. Now in this model view also, this manage relationship option is disabled. See, if you're connecting this data, if you're connecting any Power BI data set, that Power BI data set can be owned by some other user who have published the data set to the specific workspace in Power BI. Now, the issue is, if you're loading the data set, you are not the owner of the data set. You're only loading the data. The data would be loaded as a live data. You can see here, this data is loaded as a live data. There is a blue dash or there's a blue strip at the above of each table. And even if you double click on it, so it is not opening. That means you cannot change the relationship. You are not the owner of this data set. Even though I'm the owner, even though my name is there for the data set, I am the owner. I cannot change that relationship here because we are trying to connect it as a live data. If you're connecting data set directly to the Power BI new report, in that case, it will work like a live connection. Direct query is different, import is different, and live connection is different. In case of live connection, complete data model is loaded, but you are not the owner of that data model. See, this data model will act like a SQL Server analysis service. Wherever you are creating a semantic model and directly you're loading that model, it will act like a SQL Server analysis service. If I hover on this, name is master date, data source is SQL Server analysis service, and it is trying to give you the server name as well. That specific workspace name is giving it as a server name. Now, this same SQL Server analysis service option is enabled in Azure Cloud as well. If I go to this Azure Cloud, go to the subscription, I'll follow the same approach. approach, come down to the resources, click on create. See here, if you mention analysis service, I'm generally searching analysis service. See the first option, this is analysis service. I'll go here, click on create. So it is asking you to create the analysis service. Now, what do you mean by analysis service? It is a kind of service available in Azure. Now, this is the second service which we are going to discuss. One is storage account, which we have discussed. Second is analysis service. It is used like Power BI semantic model. Now, in simple terms, this is only with respect to Power BI developer, how live connection works, how it works, how it is different than a normal direct query. For that reason, I'm going to give an example of analysis service. It is just like Power BI semantic model. So whatever modeling you are doing, it can be done in this analysis service. So one of the biggest advantage of using analysis services, if the data is large. See, if the data is large, we are not, the Power BI will not own this data. The Power BI desktop will not own this data. The data is large and it will take some time to load visuals. Now, how is it different means? Assume that if your data set size is around 10 GB, there can be a possibility some of the Power BI data set size are around 10 GB. Now, in this case, 10 GB of data set size is there. It will take around 30 to 60 seconds to load the visuals. Because every time you're opening this Power BI, even if you open it in Power BI service, it will take 30 to 60 seconds to load this visuals. Why? Because the data is huge. Now, in case you want to reduce this time, within 5 seconds only, the visuals should load with the latest data. In that case, analysis service is used. Now, why analysis service is used? It helps to improve visuals to load faster. This is one of the only, or this is one of the biggest advantage of analysis service. And you need not own this data. Power BI service or Power BI desktop is not owning this data. Analysis service will own this data. See, it is just like a semantic model. It is just like a semantic model. Whatever semantic models we have created here, that same semantic models, the same semantic models can be directly pulled into the Power BI desktop, which will act like a live connection, which is nothing but an analysis service. We are not owner of this data set. We are simply using this data set, whatever data set we have loaded this data set, semantic model. This semantic model, we are not owner. If you want to change this data modeling, either you can click on settings and you can go here. As you are the owner, you can change the dataset settings here. You can change the modeling here. But if you're loading this semantic model directly to Power BI, it will act like a live connection. Why? Because you're not the owner. You're only pulling that data from that specific semantic model or a data set. Now, that same option is enabled in Azure. I've created one semantic, which is, if I go to subscription, in my subscription, come down to the resources. See, there is one analysis service which is created. This is analysis service. If I go down to this analysis service, in this analysis service, there is an option called as manage. This manage is kept under models. So I have created one model which is Adventure Works, this model, and I want to connect it to this Adventure Works model. See, there is an option open in Power BI desktop. Now, if I click on this, it will automatically get downloaded. Now, if I click on open, this model is owned by this analysis service. You are not the owner. Power BI developer is not the owner. Now, if I open this desktop, you'll get an idea. It will work same like this. There would be no data option enabled here. There is only report. There is only model view. And even in model view, you do not have that flexibility to change the relationship. Only to view relationship, you can see that. We can only see the relationships, how relationship is there. You cannot change that relationship.
So for example, if we want to add any, as per the request, we want to add a new column or delete a column, then obviously we have to do the changes in the model in that case.
Yes. Now, in that case, you have to open this model in Visual Studio. If you have your Visual Studio, how to connect this analysis service? The best option is open the Visual Studio, change the models, add a new data, change the modeling, and then again re-upload that model to the same analysis service. You need to have the Visual Studio. Now, this is more a kind of cube development. This is not related to Power BI developer. This is not a compulsion. Also, if you're working as a Power BI developer, no one will ask you, do you know about cube? This is only an added advantage. Cube is nothing but processing your data, processing your large chunk of data in analysis service.
Sir, I have one question. May I ask?
Mm, mm,
Sir, I have actually, I have two workspaces.
mm,
Recently, I published one report to one workspace. In that workspace, I have 6 reports. Okay. I have another workspace with no reports. When I published one of the report, it was directly changed to live connection. But the same report I published for testing purpose, I published that report in the new workspace. It is still like in when we download the file, right? It will show two options. One is the directly data set and report I'm getting as a single Power BI report. But the other report, which have 6 reports, it is showing converted to live connection. Why? Like as you said, like it's matching the what you're saying. Why it is automatically converted? Due to depends on the workspace size or what?
If the data is large, if your data is large, see, if I go to this report, this is my report. I'll click on this report.
Yes,
For you, this option is disabled, it seems.
yes, for one of the workspace, the same
Okay.
report,
Okay.
other it
Now
converted to.
maybe you are not the owner of that workspace. That is one reason. Still, if you are the owner of that workspace, how is it possible? If I go to this report, if you have kept this large semantic model option on,
It is an on.
it is on.
Yes.
In that case, you will always be able to download as a live connection only. Why is it kept on? You can compare this. Wherever data is large, it will act like an analysis service. See, Power BI dataset size is 10 GB. That means the data size is more. Even though it is 1 MB, even though it is 1 KB as also, it will always take it as large model. Why? Because you have kept this large model option enabled. In that case, if this large model is enabled, if I again go back to that same report, I would be only able to download it as live connection only. It will take some time. Have I opened that same report? Now that is the question. See.
So we have to make it off, right? You're saying.
Yes. Large model should be kept off. Now, this large model option, the Power BI team, the Microsoft team have directly come up with some update. In that case, if at all it's a large model, Power BI service will automatically handle it. But still, there is a limit. Power BI service, if the data set is going beyond a certain limit, you have to use the Azure analysis service. Now, in that case, analysis service is called as SSAS, SQL Server Analysis Service. Using your SSMS, you can connect. There is a tool called as SSMS. You can connect this SAS, the analysis service cube, directly from here, and you can change your modeling. You want to load new data, load a new data, either using SSMS or either using Visual Studio. The best is to use Visual Studio because Visual Studio is where you can change, is where you can write your DAX as well. Even using SSMS, you can write DAX, but the best option is to use Visual Studio. This is more a kind of cube.
So one final question, sir. So do we have any workspace limited size is there? Because what I observed is,
10 GB.
as I told you, like earlier, the report was with the same option, first option, without live connection. But when I published this report, new report, it was automatically changed with to live connection. That is my question. But same report published in other workspace, it come as without live connection.
Probably you're not the owner of that workspace. See,
Okay.
while
Not-
creating workspace only, in simple terms, while creating workspace only, you will get that option. Now, for the people who have joined with Power BI, they already know if you're creating a new workspace, click on new workspace. You can write the workspace. If you come down to advanced, see here, you'll get an option called as large semantic model. If this workspace is default selected as large semantic model, that means you will not be able to download that file as a import file or PBX file. It would be downloaded as live connection only. Now you want to change that report, go down to your semantic model, change the settings, keep off that large semantic model, you will be able to download it.
Okay, sir. Yeah, sure. Thank you.
At workspace level only, they might have kept that large semantic model option enabled.
Okay.
Now, if I want to connect this adventure workspace, see here also this adventure workspace, if I go to model view, there is no manage relationship option enabled. If I double click on it, still I'll get that same error. Something went wrong because we do not have that flexibility. If I hover on this, you can see server name is mentioned. Database is Adventure Works. Server name is ASA, Azure Analysis Service, East US. Now, if I come down to the portal, this is my portal. And where is this kept? Overview. This is kept in East US location. And this is my server. It is just a simple service which is available in Azure portal. If you directly log in, if you directly connect it to semantic model, it will act like an analysis service, or else you have that flexibility. You can go down, create an analysis service, get your model deployed here. Now, if I click on new model, see, there is a sample data model. Either you can get that sample data or else you can create your own model. Now, how do I create it? And a model is created using Visual Studio. If you download Visual Studio, you need to connect this, and from there you can load any specific data. So I'm not going to cover in-depth of analysis service. This is not a part of our data analysis course, but in simple terms, I also wanted to give you an idea what live connection will look like. Live connection will look like. See, earlier till December 2022, we were not even getting this model view option in the analysis service. But after January 23 update, they have given us a flexibility. We can check how modeling is done. We can still come back and check how modeling is done, but we cannot change that modeling. Earlier, there was not even option to view the modeling. There was no option to view modeling also for a live connection. Only report view was the option. But they have come up with a new update where you can see the modeling, but you cannot update that modeling. Update option is disabled. So in case you want to connect any report as a live, it should be analysis service live connection, or else it should be a semantic model from which a direct report is connected. Service 2, service 1. So service 2, it is not a part of data analyst. As a data analyst, it is not compulsion to learn analysis service. Yeah, if you know this, it is an added advantage. This is an added advantage. And if you want to learn this is more a kind of, it will take almost 7 to 8 working days to get an idea about analysis service. It might look easy. It is just like a Power Query only, where you can do the query level analysis, where you can do the modeling, but it will take 7 to 8 working days to get the complete understanding. So how Power Query works, analysis service will work same way. A Power Query transformation would be created and you can load that data directly to the analysis service. From there, you can connect it to the Power BI. Modeling is also done at the Visual Studio level only. Your Power Query querying, transforming is done at the Visual Studio level only, and only reporting is done at the Power BI end. Only reporting is the option which is left at the Power BI end. And if you're using a live connection, many of the DAX functions will not work. See, there is no option to add a new column. There is option to add new measure only. If you are adding a column, that means you are taking some additional space. So you cannot add a column. Calculated column is not there. Now, if I again go down to modeling, new measure, quick measure, new table, new column, these options are disabled. Why? Because in case of live connection, if you add a new column, it will take an additional storage. That means storage is not at our end. Storage is at analysis service end. Questions on this live connection or an analysis service? It is
Sir,
just a simple service.
you will explain, right, in the further sessions how to handle the
analysis service, how to connect it to Visual Studio, that is not a part. If I go down, if I go above, let me open. Just a moment. If I show the syllabus also, see, I only wanted to give you an idea how analysis service works, how live connection works. That was our primary aim. Now, if you see here, nowhere there is a mentioning of analysis service. And still, people might have a question that why am I not covering this? For analysis service, you need to have a Visual Studio, you need to have a tabular model installed in your system, and there is a very high chance that tabular model and analysis service isn't supported in many of the Windows systems. Your Windows has to be clear licensed Windows. Your Windows need to support with the latest updates. Only then tabular model, only then Visual Studio will support. If you're using tabular model, if you're using analysis service on your local systems, 99% of the time people will get some issues related to access. Now, if you're working in a company, your company will take care about Windows. In that case, tabular model will work. And this tabular model is not recommended by any company. If you're working as a Power BI developer, only one of them will work as a cube specialist. If there is a team of 4 or 5 members, out of which one of them will work as a cube specialist. For him, every system or every update has to be, Windows update has to be very crisp and clear. Only then it will work. The analysis service will work properly. Now, even if I teach this, I'll guarantee you almost everyone will reach out to me that I'm unable to connect Visual Studio correctly to this analysis service, which I've created here. Why? Because someone might be using corrupted Windows, someone might be using cracked Windows, someone might be using Windows which is not updated correctly, or maybe that Windows is not supported with the tabular model. Everyone will come up with a new question, and I'm not here to answer every question independently. Now, that is the reason we are not covering it. See, I've covered storage services. I would be covering in detail along with Azure Data Factory how file systems are bifurcated in ADLS. But just to get started, we have started with storage services. There is nowhere mentioning of analysis service. Just to give you an idea how live connection works, to give you an idea how analysis service is different, how analysis service is related to large data model. That was the reason to explain analysis service in today's session. Now, any questions? Any questions?
So in logic apps, what exactly we will in logic apps that we
Okay, your good name?
this is Kumar.
Oh, yeah, Kumar. Kumar, am I right?
Yes.
Okay, so in logic apps, it is just like a Power Automate environment. I'm not sure if you are aware about the Power Platform.
Okay.
In Power Automate, it's a kind of, you will feel ADF and logic apps both are same. But in case of logic apps, there is one more flexibility. You can send automated emails. This is one of the advantage. In case of ADF, there is no option to send emails. If you're using ADF and you are extracting some information, you want to send that information as an email, there is no option in ADF. ADF is simply ETL tool. Whereas logic apps, it is a combination of ETL as well as a kind of automating tool where you can send emails, where you can send alerts. Now, same Power Automate will work same manner. Logic apps and Power Automate are same. The difference is logic apps is a part of Azure Cloud and Power Automate is a part of Power Platform environment. Now, how logic apps will look alike?
In ADF also we have the alerts, na? We will get mails, na? Whenever the failure will happen.
Failure will only in case of failure you'll get an email. In case of logic apps, even if it is succeeded, it will send an email.
No, there also we have that option.
If the pipeline is succeeding, will you get an email in ADF?
Yes, we'll get.
What email you're getting, the pipeline got succeeded, right?
Yes.
Now, in case of logic apps, whatever output that pipeline has represented, that output would be sent as an email.
Okay, output means
You got that?
Output means exactly the details of the status of
details of the transformation which we have done.
Okay.
Now assume that you're loading data from a SQL to storage account,
Okay,
the
blob.
ADLS. Now you want to, that SQL file, you want to load that SQL. You're pulling some certain SQL data from a table.
Okay.
And that table has around 100 records. You want to send this 100 records as an email, you can use logic apps. Logic app will send an alert that these are the 100 records which are being copied from SQL to storage. And why a logic app is used? See, usually wherever records are low, you can keep that logic app and you can send that email with 100 records in display. It will display all that 100 records in an email, or else you can keep this file as attachment.
Oh,
Now,
okay,
this
good.
flexibility is not available in ADF.
Okay, we'll keep the data also.
Yep, you can keep the data also.
Okay, right.
In case of ADF, pipeline succeeds, you will only get notification pipeline
Yes,
run successfully. Pipeline failed at this instance. That is the only email. Alert you are getting. In case of logic apps, including alert, you will get the records. You will get the transformation which you have done.
Okay, right.
Power Automate also works the same. Now, one of the advantage of using logic apps is, see, many of the you're working on some analysis, sentiment analysis. Usually companies use this for mostly sentiment analysis
Okay.
or email attachment perspective. Now assume that you are working for Microsoft and Microsoft want to get an idea how Twitter platform is trending with the Microsoft Word. How this Twitter platform, how X platform is trending with Microsoft Words. That means in Twitter, we trend with hash, right? So you want to get how many people are using this hashtags in Twitter. So you can use logic apps. You can use, ADF also to get how many people are using it. But ADF will dump it somewhere, either in storage account, or from that storage account, you have to access that file. But if you're using logic apps, it will work same like ADF, but it will send an email notification. And in that email notification, it will list out how many people from which location. You have to do all this transformation in logic apps. You have to write how many people from which location are trending this hashtag Microsoft or hashtag Azure. Assume that you're trending hashtag Azure. How many people are using this hashtag Azure, from which location they are using? You will get all that options in multiple activities. These are all activities here. In logic apps, in ADF, both are activities. See, recurrence,
Okay.
scope failed, if true, if false, there is an email activity. These are all activities. If you clump down here, see, handle exceptions, terminate. There are multiple activities in logic apps also. It will look similar like ADF, but it is slightly different. Now that difference is you can send an email. That is one of the advantage.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Ritesh, whenever we pull the data from any of the data source, it sends an email with the data and all of the details. That is what you mentioned, right?
Yep. And if
Is
the
it for
data is very
different?
large, assume that the data is very large, 1 GB of file. You cannot send that 1 GB of file in an attachment. So in that case, ADF is the only option. But if you want to send a file as an attachment or as an alert for that end user, that this is what the data is being copied in, if the data has to be very small, that data has to be very crisp and clear. In that case, you can go with the logic apps.
So do we have to make any kind of setting to get this particular email if it's small data set?
There is no as such settings. There is an option called as email activity. In that email activity, you can grasp that whatever data you have transformed in the above transformations, in the above activities. And this logic apps is kind of easier. In ADF, there are no recommendations given in case you're using a logic app. See here, if I click on this image, if I come down, send error message to log analytics. See this FX result, what it is trying to get, whatever result it has read from here, that result will come down here, send error message, and this error message would be sent as an HTTP alert. Alert is 400. That means error code 400, and whatever result you are getting in this read count from CE and send it to ASB, this output is captured here in the result. Now, maybe it is, for few of them, it is very difficult. Whatever, this is one activity. Try reading the account from CE and send it to ASB. So this is one activity in logic apps. It will read that information, and whatever reading information it has kept it in this activity, that read information would be sent as a error message or error alert. Alert is 400, and whatever it has read in this fx function. This function is an output of this activity. So it would be sent as an 400 error code to the HTTP website, which they are using. Now, if I take it more deeply, let me give you one more example. Logic apps with email. Now, this is the best example. So this is one of the flow in Logic apps. This flow will run on daily basis at 6 hours 30 minutes. See, 6 hours 30 minutes. It is running a query. Whatever query it has run, it will get that information. It will create a HTML table here, and whatever table it has created, it will send that table in an email version. Now, in this email activity, you will get multiple options. If I come down, see, HTML table is created. This, whatever query it is running, that query would be stored in a table format. If I again come down, see here in the email body, you can mention what should be the subject name, to whom shall we send this HTML table. Only thing is, HTML table is captured in one of the output. You can simply mention that output here. Get that output. In the body, output would be sent. Output is our HTML table. And to whom you want to send, you can mention that email ID. What should be the subject line? You can mention that subject line. And if you run this flow, it will run this query. Whatever query it has run, it will store it in a HTML table, and that table would be sent to that specific person at the last. So this is how a Logic app will work. In ADF, we do not have this flexibility. ADF is for only transforming data. This is not for transforming. This is more a kind of sending alerts, sending updates. Logic apps is more a kind of use for alerts and updates.
So this is a cloud service in Azure, is that?
Yep.
Okay. It comes under resources, right?
Yep. It comes under Azure, or else you can go with Power Platform, which is Power Automate. Power Automate is also similar like Logic apps. In Power Platform, we have two, Power Automate or Power Apps. Both are same, but most of our data, data analyst will work on Logic apps as compared to Power Automate. Power Automate is a bit cheaper as compared to Logic apps, because Logic apps is a bit costlier, but still, how beneficial is it? It will send an alert. In case of ADF, alert is different. ADF is doing transformation. Logic app is not specifically doing any kind of transformation. It is simply filtering the data and sending it as an alert, an update. Any more questions?
So using this logic apps, we'll get 1 month of data, or this again it will come and sit into the storage location only, no?
Could you please repeat the question? I didn't got you.
Logic apps also comes under, it will also store the information of all the ADFs pipelines and all, no?
No. If I go down to this is our Azure portal. If I go here, as Logic apps, it's a separate service.
Yeah.
It's a separate service. You have to create a separate Logic apps. A separate Logic app would be created.
Okay.
It's a separate service. It is nowhere related to ADF. ADF is a different service. Logic app is a different service.
Log analytics and all comes under logic apps only, no?
Log analytics is related to your cloud. Whatever cloud environment you're using, you want to check the log analytics of that. It is not a service. See, It is not specific service where you can check your logs. Now, if I go to monitor, in monitor also I can check. Here we have few options: metrics, logs. Now this is more a kind of log analytics. Here you can check how your Azure cloud environment is working, what all logs are generated, what all services you're using. For that services, what all logs are generating.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
If you come down, you'll get more options. Log analytical workspace. Now, if you want to learn all this log analytics, containers, this is more a kind of cloud architect role, cloud admin or cloud architect role.
Okay.
Now, here you can monitor the health of your services. Whatever services you have created, you can check the logs, you can check the metrics, you can check the health. All this can be analyzed using monitor. I mean, just in case if you're using a mobile, in mobile also you can check your app health. That is how this monitor will work in Azure. Azure is your mobile, whatever services you are creating that are all the apps, and you want to check the app health, app environment, app log analytics, then monitor is one of the settings option available.
Okay.
If you come down
So
service
for
health,
the
it will list out.
pipelines that we create in Azure Data Factory, for that we can create an alert for the logic app, right? Let's say if a pipeline has been failed due to
Yes,
some reason,
yes.
so we
You
can
can
create a
definitely set
logic
an
app.
alert.
Okay.
If the pipeline is failing, due to which region that pipeline is failing, you can get that. At which activity it is failing, you can grasp that information in logic apps, and you can send an email that this is where it is failing. Even that is possible.
Okay. So this is where we do that particular activity, right? In the
Yep,
logic
yep.
apps. Okay. Okay. Done.
Any more questions? So today is the third session. We still have 2 more sessions. After that, if you are okay with my teaching, if you're okay with my lectures, the one who wants to join for this Azure, get in touch with the KSR team. They'll definitely help you out. I guess there are few people who have already learned Power BI from KSR, but Azure they haven't. For you also, a different email ID, all that accesses would be given. How to activate it, I'll again show you by this weekend. You'll get an idea how to activate your portal, but still, see, I'm not going in depth of all these services. I've only started with the basics. Once this portal is active, then I can go in depth. I can teach you how it is activated, how it is logged in. Any more questions?